Hello and welcome to today's IEEE Authorship and Open Access Symposium, in which we'll discuss tips and best practices to help you get published, as well as review the many open access options now available from IEEE. My name is Michael Spada of IEEE, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. Before we get started, here are a few items to keep in mind to ensure you have the optimal experience for today's event. If you experience any technical issues during the event, please type your issue in the Q&A window. We have a team standing by to support and help you resolve any such issues. Here's a quick tip. If your video or audio should lag at any time, please try refreshing your browser, as that could help resolve the issue. If you have any questions for our presenters, you can also type them into the Q&A window, and we will answer as many questions as we can in our time together today. A certificate of participation will be made available at the end of the session, and a recording of today's event will be made available a few hours after today's session ends. So thank you so much for joining us today. This series of authorship webinars has proven to be a very popular and very much in demand, as we have seen thousands of registrants from around the world participate in these webinars, with attendees that include students, professors, researchers, librarians, department heads, open access administrators, deans, and many more. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We think you'll find it to be a worthwhile experience, as we have a packed agenda for you today, with topics that include what editors and reviewers look for in submissions, common reasons why papers are rejected, how to select the right publication for your particular research, submission guidelines for AI-generated text, reasons to consider open access journals for your submissions, research strategies using IEEE Explore, authorship tools, and many other topics. Taking us through all these topics is our panel of experts, and that includes Dr. Anuradha Anaswamy, who's an accomplished author, editor, professor, and a research scientist from MIT, Esther Lukash, an IEEE Client Services Manager and Research Strategy Specialist, who has literally helped thousands of authors refine their research and literature review strategies over the years. We also have Chris Zakarewski, an IEEE Regional Manager and Publishing Solutions Specialist, who will help explain the many open access options available to authors and institutions, and show you how to easily figure out if your institution has an OA agreement with IEEE. Following these presentations, our panel will join us for a live Q&A session, where our experts answer as many of your questions as we can in the time that we have today. So you'll definitely want to hang on for that. But let's get started with telling you a little bit about IEEE. IEEE is the world's largest technical professional organization, a leading authority in electrical engineering, computing, and a range of related technologies. IEEE is a public charity dedicated to advancing technology for the benefit of humanity. So that's our mission. And over to the right, you can see just a couple of the many initiatives that IEEE has in support of this mission. That includes the IEEE Smart Village Initiative that brings sustainable energy to off-grid communities, serving over 70,000 people in 280 villages in Cameroon, Haiti, Nigeria, Kenya, South Sudan, the Himalayas, India, and more. You can find out more at smartvillage.ieee.org about those initiatives. And you also see we have initiatives to take action to help combat climate change, working with the global technical community to help develop solutions. You can find out how you can get involved and join the IEEE climate change technical community to connect and collaborate with colleagues across these areas at climate.change@ieee.org. You'll also see a link for that in the resources section. So these are just a couple examples of the IEEE mission in action, and that mission is really reflected in all of our core areas of activity. As a membership organization with over 480,000 members worldwide, as a conference organizer with over 2,000 conferences held annually, as a standards development organization with such well-known and popular standards as the 802.11 Wi-Fi standards, ArcFlash, Smart Grid, blockchain, and even standards on AI and ethics. And of course, we're a publisher of leading journals, conferences, standards, ebooks, and e-learning. All this information is made available through the IEEE Explore digital library, which has nearly 7 million total documents, more than 30 million downloads each month, and over 10 million unique users. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see a screenshot from IEEE Explore that features works from several well-known technology pioneers. For example, the 2025 IEEE Medal of Honor Award winner, which is one of the world's most prestigious technology-focused prizes and awards. It was awarded to Henry Samueli, the founder of Broadcom, for his pioneering research in broadband communication and his work in STEM education. You can find nearly 100 articles from Samueli within IEEE Explore. You can also see the 2025 winners of the Nobel Prize in Physics, who have all published papers in IEEE Explore, many of which laid the foundation for their achievements in quantum physics. In fact, there were over 100,000 articles related to the topics of quantum mechanics, quantum computing, and other quantum-related technologies in IEEE Explore. You can find a link to the articles from the Nobel laureates that are on the IEEE Explore homepage. So I spoke a little bit about the IEEE mission on the previous slide, and of course, IEEE Explore plays a vital role in fulfilling our mission to drive global innovation through the sharing of knowledge. And that mission helps guide the IEEE publication strategy and goals. IEEE strives to support all authors and readers globally. That means being able to offer an author a publication venue that's compliant with their circumstances, regardless of their funding status, the publishing mandates they might have in place, or where in the world they might work. So we provide authors with a choice to publish in a traditional journal or in a fully open access journal. And we continue to provide more options to authors and with more choices to support their work and the needs of all authors with a growing OA program. An OA program that includes over 180 hybrid journals and magazines. These titles offer both open access publishing options as well as traditional subscription-based publishing options for authors that may not have access to APC funding. We also offer more than 30 fully open access topical journals, and we have our multidisciplinary open access journal, IEEE Access. That's our largest OA journal, with has just reached a milestone of over 100,000 articles published in IEEE Explore. It's a highly cited journal in a range of fields, and it features a rapid but still quite rigorous peer review process of 4 to 6 weeks. And of course, all of IEEE's open access solutions follow IEEE established publishing guidelines and principles of peer review. They are compliant with funder mandates. And we are constantly adding more open access options for authors than ever before, as well as options for institutions. With over 500 OA agreements with institutions around the world, all of these are designed to make it easier and convenient for institutions and funders to manage costs for authors and to simplify the publishing process. In a little while, my colleague Chris Zacharuski will show you how to search to see if your institution has an open access agreement with IEEE by visiting open.ieee.org. So with that, let me introduce our first speaker. Dr. Anuradha Anaswamy is the founder and director of the Adaptive Control Lab in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at MIT. Her research interests span adaptive control theory and its applications in aerospace, automotive, propulsion, and energy systems, as well as smart grids and urban mobility. She's the author of over 500 publications and a graduate textbook in those fields. She's a fellow with the IEEE and the International Federation of Automatic Control, a recipient of the Distinguished Alumni Award from the Indian Institute of Science, and she received the IEEE Control Systems Technology Award. She's the editor-in-chief of the IEEE Control Systems magazine and serves on the editorial board of the IEEE Open Journal of Control Systems and other publications. She's the president-elect of the American Automatic Control Council, and she received her PhD from Yale. So with that, let me hand it off to Dr. Anaswamy.
Thank you, Michael, for that excellent introduction. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. Happy Wednesday to you. I see that participants are from different countries, and so morning, afternoon, evening. What I would like to share with you is basically my journey as a researcher, as a published author in IEEE publications, as well as editor-in-chief of an IEEE magazine. So what are the different challenges that we face as an author, as an editor, as a reviewer, as an advisor to students? What are the main points to keep track of is what basically I would like to go over in my talk. So as Michael mentioned, I'm from MIT. I'm in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. I started the lab called Active Adaptive Control Laboratory, which is involved in basically decision-making in complex systems in a variety of engineering systems, including aerospace, automotive, propulsion, and energy. So a lot of these problems are actually things that are of relevance and have been showcased in IEEE and is very congruent with the overall IEEE mission of bringing technology to serve humanity. So this is really what I've been involved in over the years, and our work is focused quite a bit on making decisions that basically improve the performance of all of these systems. And so things like smart grids and smart cities and what the role of those decisions are, including artificial intelligence, is really what we do, what we do in my lab. Now, in this talk, what I would like to go over is basically these four items. What are the publishing choices as an author, let's say that you've come up with a document that you want to disseminate? What's the right publication for your submission? Because you want to think about, you put a lot of effort in coming up with this idea, and you've developed this idea in a manuscript. And so you want to now reach the right audience. And for that, you need to really figure out what the right publication is. And I'll walk you through some of the key steps. Now, how do you put together a paper? Let's say that you're in the process of writing the paper. What's the right way to get the thoughts that you have in the best way possible into the paper, into those written words? So I'd like to go over that and then walk you through what the submission process is when you submit to a particular publication. And the next step that you'll go through is peer review. What exactly is involved in what does your manuscript go through after you send it to the journal and you submit it? What exactly is the process that goes through behind the scenes? And the peer review process is what I'd like to walk you through next. And in all of these things, you really have to make sure that you follow certain guidelines, you follow ethics, and that importance of ethics in publishing is extremely important. And these are the things that you will hear me talk about for the next 40 minutes or so. So let's start with publishing choices. How do you select the right publication for your submission? Now, as I mentioned before, you have an idea that you've developed, and you want to make sure that it really reaches the largest audience of interest to you. So in order to do that, you have to first of all make sure that the publication has a reputation. Does it have a long history? Does it have a strong reputation? Is it a credible source? Does it provide quality information? And all of these are extremely important because you really want your manuscript to go to meet the highest standards possible. And there are various ways in which you can check these things. And there are all kinds of citation metrics. There is something called an impact factor. All of this information you can readily search on the internet and find out what it means and what exactly does it assess. There are things called eigenfactors, artificial influence scores. There are all kinds of citation metrics these days. And you have to pay attention to what these are. And that's one way in which you can assess the reputation of a publisher. And then there are other kinds of ways in which you can tell about a quality journal. Something called indexing. Is the journal listed and indexed in journal databases? And there are so many that are out there that are very highly reputed. So I would recommend that, like for instance, Web of Science, Scopus, Directory of Open Access Journals. So these are all some of the scholarly journal databases. And this helps you to make sure that whatever you write, the paper that is published is discoverable, because you don't want it to go to some journal that nobody knows how to access, right? And these days, every paper that you write is really globally read and cited. So it's very important to pay attention to these things. Does it have a strong peer review process? This is the best way in which a research article really gets assessed and published. Your peers, people who know about this topic as well as much as you do, and probably about the same or if not a little bit more, they will give you a chance to improve your work so that you can explain your idea in a better manner. And it also then helps you increase the chance of it being cited. So these are some of the things that the peer review process will help with and is important for you to pay attention to. Now, every journal is on a particular platform, a publishing platform, and the platform is again how people find your paper. Does it receive a lot of significant traffic? Because most publications are e-publications. And so is it easily accessible? Is that platform something going to be stable, or does it disappear after a few years? These are the kinds of things that you really have to pay attention to. Now, with all this sort of general information of different various criteria in mind, let's come to IEEE. Now, IEEE is a highly trustworthy organization. It's been a trusted voice for all of engineering and technology, and it has a very long history and can be traced back to 1884, actually. And there are several IEEE journals, and all of them are respected, trusted, and they rank among the most highly cited in their fields. And as Michael mentioned, there is an IEEE Explore library, which is absolutely fantastic, and it has over 10 million monthly users. So that's a lot of eyes on your paper, so that's something that is important to keep in mind. And all of these publications are subject to IEEE's established rigorous peer review process, publishing principles, quality standards. So all of the IEEE journals really go through a very elaborate check and are constantly reviewed and made sure that these rigorous peer review process standards are maintained. And not only that, IEEE maintains partnerships with all kinds of other providers like Elsevier, EBS, EBSCO, OCLC, Clarivate, ProQuest, Crossref, NLM, and all these basically help more eyes on your paper. They maximize the discovery of your works. And of course, they're easily available on Google. So on Google search, if you just do a simple Google search of your article, almost the first few are almost always links to IEEE Explore, which also is another indicator of how popular and trusted and easily accessible IEEE is as a publisher. So now that you have some idea of how to go about picking a publication, you have to then pick a particular publication. And the first bullet here is extremely important. You have to make sure that you select one target publication. You should not do concurrent submissions. These are unethical. Because every time you publish a paper, you submit a paper, there's an elaborate process that actually is launched, because there is an editor, and the editor then appoints an associate editor then determines reviewers, and they all go through your paper very carefully in order to go through these different steps in the process. And so think about the effort that your paper launches. And so it's not ethical to really have multiple journals go through this process simultaneously. So select just one target publication. You can ask your supervisor or other colleagues who published, or mentors who have experience in publishing. So what do I do? How do I go about publishing? They are your best resources, so that you can ask them a lot of detailed questions about the concerns that you have, and they'll give you guidance. And then once you determine your potential target publication, read the aims and scope. Those keywords that are listed there, the scope that is put together, is really put together very carefully. So you have to ensure that your article is a good fit. If you're going to write something about medical devices, then you don't want to publish it in an AI journal or in mining, right? You want to make sure that your target publication is indeed the right fit for your article. The next thing is you want to make sure that the papers that you cite in your references really help identify, okay, so who are your peers? What is your novel idea and what are you building it on top of? So, and you want to make sure this, because you can't just randomly select some publications because they were highly cited. If it's not relevant to what you are saying, what the narrative is that you have in your paper, then that's not the right thing to do. In fact, there are lots of tips. IEEE Author Center is a fantastic resource. And so you should check out the IEEE Publication Recommender, and it gives you all kinds of tips as to how to go about doing this. Search by using your article keywords or even your abstract. So then you can use that in order to figure out what the right kind of references are, and the link is provided right here. And these are all excellent resources. The next kind of decision that you might want to make is, where do you want to publish your paper? And very broadly speaking, there are conference papers. Conferences where you can publish, journals where you can publish. I want to talk about the right column first before going into the left column. A conference paper is exactly what it means, right? You submit a paper to a conference, it gets reviewed there too, and then it becomes part of the conference proceedings, and the proceedings get published. And again, it goes uploaded, say, for instance, on IEEE Explore, and a lot of the people, all of the folks who will access your journal article can access your conference paper too. Now, the whole submission arc and reviewing and all that sometimes is faster for a conference paper. So, and because of that review process being shorter, you can disseminate your work very quickly. So what that means is that you can get quick, informal feedback to use in your research, because when you, not only do you publish, you actually present it at a conference, which means you have a direct online, in-person interaction with your audience. And so they will then ask you questions, or they'll network with you afterwards after you present, and all that gives you very good feedback, saying, oh, okay, this is really what I should have done, and this can improve, etc. It gives you an opportunity to present your preliminary results, highlight some of your recent work. And all of these things is really sort of a test of how good your idea is, and gives you lots of ways in which you can improve it. And also it's typically shorter, so it's easier to write, faster to write, and fewer references, and all these things basically make it like a first step, potentially. On the other hand, let's go to the left side. The journal article is much more fully developed, and it's got a lot of final findings. It's original results, research presented, of course, unless it's clearly a review paper. And often, again, depending upon the scope and aim of a particular journal, some journals don't submit review papers, so be careful that you're really indeed presenting original results. Often, if it's just a collection of reviews of papers you've read, that is really not good for a publication. And then these original results must have clear conclusions and then supported by the data. So it's a lot more full-blown and a holistic representation of your work. So you might want to think about having a conference paper first. And if you indeed are going to submit something to a conference, make sure that you actually go there to present it, because sometimes people, maybe that's something that is said in the next. Okay, all right. So what are the advantages and disadvantages? So like I said, again, let me go to the right-hand side first. IEEE conference proceedings are recognized as the most vital collection of published articles that are really consolidated in a whole bunch of fields. And the important thing, and that's what I was saying just now, if you don't present it, if you don't physically go there to present your article at the conference, and again, the rules are all very clearly laid out in the conference website, then that may be suppressed in IEEE Explore. So just make sure that you commit yourself to the possibility of traveling and presenting. The advantages of IEEE journals are the top-cited journals are really give you an opportunity to have lots of people read your paper, which is always a very good thing. And so you can see the metrics there, it's cited 2.5 times more. often in patents than other publishers. But you have to make sure that you really have a good idea. And because the acceptance rate of a quality journal is very low, sometimes it's 10%, 5%, 20%. So the chance of a submission being rejected can be high. And you want to be aware of that as well when you submit a paper. So again, among your conference or publication, you have lots of choices. There are 2,000 conference proceedings every year. So you have to review the conference calendar, make sure that it's a good match, first of all, for your subject matter, and your calendar, your travel schedule is such that you'll be available to present. There are more than 230 journals that have published a variety of technical areas, so you have to review the journal listings. And, going through a typical set of articles that get published gives you an idea as to who would potentially read it. And when you find yourself reading articles of other papers, what journals do you go to? That's also a good test sort of to find out, oh, hey, you know what? I really like reading this particular article and I get a lot from reading this IEEE journal. Let me publish there. But because the type of article they're looking for, and which is what I really like to read and which is what I probably will write, is the one that would be a good fit for this. So that's also another way in which you can make a decision about which IEEE publication. Now, Michael talked about this earlier, and there will be more discussions and presentation, I think, after mine about open access. So there are different kinds of models for journals. So open access is exactly what it suggests. So everybody can directly read it, and they don't have to be part of a particular institution that has a subscription model and pay for access. For instance, I'm in a university at MIT, and MIT has these subscriptions for many of these things. So when I go and when I type the paper, I can actually download it. But that's a different model from a fully open access journal. So, and IEEE gives you the the authors an option whether or not you want to use a fully open access journal or a hybrid journal. So the difference between the hybrid journal and the fully open access is that when you submit a paper, the author really doesn't have to choose as to which kind of subscription model, which kind of publication model you want to opt for. So the review process does not really know anything about what the author has opted for. And so the reviewers are agnostic to that process, and then it gets reviewed, and then once it gets accepted, these hybrid journals give you an option. Do you want it to be open access, or do you want to be the regular pay to publish? And if it's an open access, then you have to pay an open access fee, etc. And so again, there are lots of advantages and disadvantages. And so to each of these things, open access, as the name suggests, it gives greater visibility because more people without, even those who don't have access to the subscription can read it and cite it. Sometimes some of these gold open access journals have a shorter submission to publication. So that might be of interest to you. Sometimes the funding agencies actually mandate that you need to follow certain publishing guidelines, publishing policies that are often prescribed, in which case you might want to make sure that you really follow those guidelines. So those are all some of the things that you want to keep in mind. So I just talked about the first step in this whole thing, which is what are the publishing choices. So now we go to the paper structure. Okay, so now you're ready to start thinking, you have an idea and you have selected your publication or journal that is of interest to you. How do you go about putting together the paper? Now, this is typically the IEEE format. There's a title, there's an abstract, an introduction, methodology, results followed by discussion and conclusions, and of course, references. So every one of these things, keep in mind that there are some do's and don'ts, and when you follow them, it just sort of maximizes the chance of your paper getting more readable, it's more publishable. And when people read it, they understand. And then when they understand something, they'll cite it. And so that's really what you want as an author. And therefore, following some of these practices is very, very useful. Title. It needs to be concise. if you have 30 words in a title, then that becomes an abstract. Don't do that. Make it specific and concise. It needs to be very specific to what you're trying to say, right? So if you really, okay, what is it that I'm trying to say? If there is a way in which you can describe it to yourself, the title should reflect what's in your head, right? That's what this means, specific. It should be concise. It should be descriptive. Don't make it so cryptic that nobody can understand what it's about. It should be descriptive. So there is that sweet spot where it's concise and descriptive, and make sure that your title fits that sweet spot. You have to answer the question, okay, why should the reader be reading this, right? So you want that the words in your title should capture that. You should grab the reader's attention. So sometimes when you make the words very standard, then it's like, they're not into, okay, so it seems like, just a garden variety thing. So you should be able to grab the reader's attention. And again, it should describe the overall content of your paper using the fewest possible words. Don't do a lot of technical jargon. Avoid acronyms, because otherwise then you won't understand what really you're trying to say. So that's the title. Abstract. Now, abstract tells you a little bit more. It's like a summary of what you're trying to say, right? It's a standalone condensed version of the article, and usually it's 250 words or less. And it should use some of the keywords that basically are exactly what that suggests, keywords, right? And they will use it to index your paper. So people are going through, okay, all right, who has written a paper on applying adaptive control to flight systems? Then make sure that if that's what your paper is, then people will search for flight control and adaptive flight control, and make sure that that's the keyword that you want to put in there, right? So, and the most important thing that you want to keep in mind, sometimes most people really read abstract. Sometimes they read abstract and conclusions. Sometimes they read abstract, introduction, conclusions, and not really the whole paper. So you want to grab them by making sure that the key ideas, the highlights, are all explicitly stated in the abstract. So those are the things that you want to keep in mind when you write an abstract. Same thing with keywords, right? You have to write it in a way you maximize discoverability. So, and sometimes the other thing is keywords are also used by editors to find reviewers. So make sure that your choices are relevant, because those reviewers are the ones who will assess the publishability, the merit of your paper. So make sure that the keywords are correct and it doesn't go to a wrong peer group, right? So that's something very important. Again, wear your hat of a reader when you write the paper. So after you finish writing the paper, put it away and then look at it again as if you're reading it yourself, right? Be at a distance. And then you would then say, hey, wait a minute. How come I've not said anything about this word? That should be a keyword, right? That's another way to identify these things. Often, a lot of time when I've written a paper, keywords, abstract, and title are the last thing that I write. I do it in reverse order, because it takes a while for the whole soul of your paper to come together. And only when that happens are you able to say, okay, this is really what the paper is about. It's not that you can start really like from the beginning and then go to the end. It doesn't work that way. So that's also another way to sort of make sure that the main ideas percolate to the top and shows up, and that gives you a way of writing the keywords. Introduction. Okay. What's the arrows indicate, the different blocks in the arrow tell you what exactly should be in the introduction. What are you trying to say? What's the problem, right? What are you writing about, right? And why is it an important problem? Why is it that a paper needs to be written on, right? That's the first thing. What have other people done? And, what's the prior study? What's missing? What did they not do? What is the new part, that with a gap that you have identified? And what is it that you've done about filling that gap? And then what is your approach at a very high level? And what's the methodology that I've used at a very high level? Because remember, it's an introduction. You're going to write all that. So you're just going to say, this is what I'm going to do, right? And these are the kinds of results that you're going to see, right? And then, of course, how the article is organized. So that's how the introduction should be written. Again, after you write it, wear the hat of an author and read it, a reader, and read it again. Make sure that if you were to be coming cold and just read it for the first time, you should be able to understand what it is. And that's a good litmus test as to whether or not you've written a good introduction. The methodology. So what exactly how have you taken the overall problem? I want to solve a particular problem when there is an issue, when there is a flight. So then how do you take that problem and convert it into something very concrete and say, okay, this is the way in which I would technically formulate the problem. And then what is your approach? What is the new way, the novel way in which you're going to do it with other people, your peer group who you've cited did not do? And then say, okay, I have now a new way of doing it, a better way of doing it, a faster way of doing it, something that nobody has been able to do before, and solve this open problem, and then show how you actually prove that hypothesis. And then you have to give some examples. Sometimes a best way to say, okay, this is the methodology, is to walk them through a simple example and use that illustration to clarify the idea, the approach, and support the conclusions. Now, after you do all that, okay, show that this methodology really was something that amounted to something, the impact of the methodology, right? You have to demonstrate the methodology, that you've solved the problem. Why should they believe you just because you come out, you said that it was new, right? And the results should be based on very clear, objective demonstration, validation method. Either it's a simulation or it's an experiment or it's a data-driven kind of analysis that you've done, and it should be clear. And then the results should basically explain as to what your methodology did. Figures, tables with a narrative really illustrate. Sometimes what you really start with before you're writing a paper, you do all of the results first, and you look at all the figures, and the figures or the tables are basically the punchline of the paper. And the rest of the paper basically is written in a way to support that figure. That's often a lot of times how it is done. Papers in biology, for instance, it's all about figures. So have you done all of the figures? Do the figures tell a story, and then assemble the story? Very important. Now, results and discussion are two separate things. Results is basically actual data, and it's clear. Discussion is interpretation of the results. What do these things mean? What is the impact that it has? How is it a new solution? And why is that beneficial? And how can it benefit now all of the other researchers as advanced as state of the art and all the other professionals? Those are the kinds of things that you should have in a discussion. And of course, when you're all done, what exactly have you achieved? And remember, sometimes people really read the conclusion first before they go back and read the paper. So make sure that you grab their attention. You say, okay, what is it that I've done, right? So you said there's an important problem, fine. You said that, this is what people have not done, fine. Then you're saying, hey, I'm going to solve that problem, or I'm going to fill that gap. Make sure that you finish that story cleanly in the conclusion. And you revisit the key points that you made in each section, and make sure that you have a summary of the main findings and what it means is in terms of implication. And often, you also have to be sometimes your own devil's advocate. You have to show the benefits, what are all the good points, and also be very upfront about what it cannot do, what you have not done, right? And what is the shortcoming. So that could be either something that research is always a part of the whole story, evolving story. At a high level, you cannot solve all problems in one paper, right? But you continue to advance the state of the art, sometimes with big breakthroughs and sometimes with significant breakthroughs and sometimes with small breakthroughs, and it's fine. But then you have to say, okay, this is the big challenge that I addressed. Now all these other challenges remain. And that's future readiness for research. So make sure that your conclusion has all of these different things. Okay. References. Now, references are very important. This is basically how people understand, okay, what is it that you've looked at, and what is the sort of set of different, papers, other papers that surround the story that you're telling. And it supports that, saying, look, all these other people have done that. It validates the hypothesis, right? And there's no limit to number of references, but of course, there's always sometimes a limit on the number of pages that a journal typically publishes or a conference typically publishes. But you make sure that you just don't cite them randomly, right? You should be, especially if space is a premium, you only use those that directly support your work. Don't do self-referencing unless it's really appropriate. Self-plagiarism is also considered a no-no, right? And make sure that you have the right authors and they're all properly cited, and pay attention to complete references. Sometimes, people just have initials. They don't expand the initials. They don't expand the publication name. And that's not right. It's true often references are the last thing somebody does, and the amount of attention to detail somehow starts to waver. It's not a good idea. Please make sure that the references are complete and accurate, and people should be able to find those papers through your references. So don't make them incomplete or incorrect. Okay, this is a great thing that IEEE helps with, and that is that there is additional and supporting material. So you can't put everything. Let's say there's 10-page limitation, 16-page limitation, which is some of the things that in the journals that I publish often are there. That you can't say everything in those 10 pages. So then there is ways in which you can give supplemental material, additional data, code that you used in order to do the simulations, other examples. So sometimes there's ways in which you can share some of these things. In fact, you want that because you want other people to be able to reproduce those results, right? So having a code, having the data, very useful. And so that is also another way in which you can actually help in conveying the idea that you have come up with. Other data, further data on experimental results, details on methodologies, that is not something that maybe everybody is interested in, but for those who are in your field, really, you could include that in the supplemental material. So there's the supplemental content can be stored on IEEE data port, code Ocean, and you can refer to these things. There are all kinds of other data repositories that are people are coming up with all the time, and there are nice displays of badges that IEEE Explorer has to show how such a supplemental information is available, and even whether or not it's been peer reviewed, and sort of all kinds of things that you can see. And by looking at these badges, you know how what kinds of supplemental material options you have, and use them in order to write your papers. Okay, so now we've walked through the choice of publication, the right journal, how to put together the right paper structure. Now we'll walk you through the submission process and the peer review. Okay. Now, peer review is one of the most important component in paper publishing. It's the process that is used in order to assess the quality and relevance of a manuscript. Peer review is essential to science and technology. It's essential to the quality of the published research, because you're not the only person who's working on a field. And just because you say that it's important doesn't mean that it merits publication. So your peers who have also looked at the area and who know something potentially as much about it and are an expert should agree, hey, this is a good idea, right? So the standard is that there should be at least 2 independent researchers in your relevant research area who should say that this is original, this is valid, this is significant, and they will basically provide a detailed review. And that's what the editors will use in order to determine whether or not your manuscript should be published. So this feedback is what there are all kinds of feedback here, right? It might say, oh no, this is wrong. Somebody else has already done it. Or you didn't really take this into account. It has a technical flaw. You made this assumption, which is not going to be true. Or depending upon the level of mistake or error or incorrectness in your paper, the reviewers might say, no, this should not be published. Or they might say, well, there's an idea, but there are all these different places where there is a mistake and it can be improved and the author didn't quite see it. And they'll say revise and resubmit, right? And all of these things. The most important thing as an author, don't get discouraged. This is not a personal rebuke of your work. It is a technical, objective review. And take it with an objective mind and make sure that the system set up like this really works and it helps you make your paper better. And believe me, it really will increase the quality, it'll increase the readability, it'll increase the citation, it'll increase your paper's impact. So very, very important. This is how it works. And there are all kinds of guidelines and help to make sure that you don't miss any important step. And there are submission guidelines that any target publication has, and read them carefully and make sure that your article meets all of the requirements. And every article basically has a corresponding author. If you work with 4 or 5 people or your co-authors, make sure that whoever is a corresponding author will continue to iterate with the editor, because sometimes this review process can take several months, sometimes a year, worst case 2. So make sure that you really appoint a corresponding author, nominate the corresponding author who will work with the whole review process, and make sure that you check all of the necessary files. There's also something called ORCID, which is an open researcher and contributor ID. A lot of people might have the name Anuradha Swami. How do they know that it's me? And so they are not the another person, right? So there's a unique 16-digit identifier that determines who you are. And that basically helps in making sure that the communication works properly. And the thing that typically what people are looking for is the article appropriate for this publication? Does it fit the journal? And then it goes into the details. Is the study well designed, well aggregated? Is the data accurate? Is it analyzed properly? Is it interpreted properly? Is it clear as to what you're trying to do? Sometimes people write in such a confusing manner that it's not at all clear as to what they're trying to say. So again, this is something that you really want to make sure and get other people to read yours and give you like some feedback. You're saying this, but then you say this here, and this seems to conflict with this. What does this mean? Things like that. Make sure that you express your idea clearly, concisely, logically. Also, remember, all papers in IEEE are written in English, and make sure that there are no grammatical mistakes, there are no typos. And this is also very important. And make sure, because those things unnecessarily distract from what you're trying to say, right? So make sure that some of those basic things are all addressed. Are all of the ethical requirements met? Remember, we talked about don't publish into 2 journals simultaneously. Make sure that and we will talk more about plagiarism in a minute, or all the journal requirements met. Is it really significant? I mean, if somebody did all of these things and you did an incremental change, that is not often good enough for a journal. So is it a really significant contribution? And what's the new thing that you're bringing in? Have you just solved the same problem better, or are you saying something new? So this is very important. Is the original material distinct, whatever you're trying to say, from whatever is known from the prior art? Very important. So, novelty it can be new ideas, it can be new tools, it can be a new methodology, it can be a new application. It can be because you took something from here, but then explored it in the context of another domain, and that is something that provides a big impact. So all of these constitute novelty. And you have to then really know what your peer group did in order to really assess which is considered as a breakthrough, which is considered as a big step and not just a small incremental one. And all of these will help you assess what a novelty is. Again, this author tip I cannot stress this enough. If you really write poorly, with sloppy notation, figures are not readable. No matter how good your idea is, it will not get published. So make sure that some of these basic hurdles are cleared and you have a good paper that is well written. And also, they focus on scope. They focus on the level of content. I mean, if it's too simple, it's things that an undergraduate student might know, a high school student might know. Obviously, that's not going to get published in an IEEE technical journal. It should be original material. It should be new. It should be an important problem. Make sure that it's not incremental, but a significant extension. The methodology should be sound and scientific, logical, and well explained. And the illustrations should adequately support the text and make sure that the references are current. Don't do things if nobody has done any work in the past 30 years and you're citing everything from 1990, explain why there is this big gap. Not that it has to be from 2024 to the 2020s, but if you don't do that, then they're talking about old stuff, and that might be a reason for rejection, right? So make sure of these things. And often editors and reviewers reject papers because of all these kinds of things. The content is not a good fit for the publication sometimes because every publication has a scope. And these are some of the other reasons, right? The results are inconclusive. The interpretation is incorrect. It's just fraud. Poorly written, we talked about that. It's already published. Somebody else has already done it. It does not address a significant problem. Quality is not good enough. It's not a strong enough case. I don't see that. There's these things that are wrong. It might be correct, but doesn't mean anything. There's no impact. I mean, it's just of no consequence. If doesn't have any impact and there's no value, then that's a reason for rejection. And often when it comes back, and so this is something that you should be reading, the decision letter will have all of these reviewer suggestions. All IEEE articles provide a very clear reason for why they arrived at a decision. Often there is a revise and resubmit thing. And you'll be asked to make changes and submit a revised version. So make sure, and this I mentioned before, your peer reviewer is approaching your research with fresh eyes. And so keep an open mind and don't get upset and don't think it is not personal. The process really helps you communicate the findings of your research in a better manner. And make sure that you develop a response letter. Treat the reviewers with respect and approach everything in an objective manner. So, and you point by point, you say, okay, this is what the reviewer said. I respectfully disagree. This is why I did this, and provide a point-by-point rebuttal in a very objective manner. And that often helps. And then the reviewers, if you didn't say, oh, no, you don't have any idea, don't say that, because then that really does not help, right? And then make sure when you each comment, what exactly did you do in terms of a change? Okay, this is a very good comment. Thank you for pointing it out. I have now done this, this, and this on page such and such. And respond in full sentences. Don't be cryptic. Often, this is what I have followed. If there is a 2-page list of all reviewers' comments, I try to respond in detail to all of them and make sure that my response is 5 pages, so that you're being very elaborate and making sure that you convey to them that you understand what they're saying and you fully hear them, right? It should be respectful, it should be tactful, and it should be appreciative of the reviewer's time. The IEEE Author Center is, again, a great resource for many of these things. Okay, now I have come to the last point, which is ethics, perhaps the most important point that you have to keep in mind. And I cannot stress this enough.
Dr. Anaswamy, hi, this is Michael. Please forgive the interruption. All is fine. Everything's going smoothly. I just wanted to interject for a second to say that we are getting many questions in the chat. As a result of your presentation, I just want to let everyone know that we will address as many as we can in the Q&A segment, as many common questions as we see. We're on schedule, and the next presentation is scheduled to begin in approximately 5 minutes. I also wanted to mention to our audience that Dr. Anaswamy is obviously powering through a cold for the benefit of our audience. So thank you very much for that, Dr. Anaswamy. If you do need to take a break for a second, grab some water, please go ahead and do so. But we really appreciate you powering through this for our audience.
No worries, no worries. Thank you, Mike. Okay, all right. Yeah, apologies for my voice breaking, but the adrenaline is keeping me going, I think. Okay, all right. Ethics in publishing. Plagiarism is the it used to be one of the main and most exclusive type of publishing misconduct, but then with time, there are all kinds of other kinds of misconduct that are being reported. And IEEE and all of the publishers are continuously working and have systems and tools in place to make sure that all these misconducts do not occur. First of all, what kind of misconduct is happening, and make sure that they reject these submissions and protect the integrity of our publications, the scientific integrity. So all authors should really take it upon themselves to avoid these practices if they really want to see them, because don't think that you can fool the system and get a work that is not yours really as a new paper. Unfortunately, we're continuing to see, and this is something that I've seen as both an IEEE editor as well as president of, I was a president of IEEE Control System Society, and now I'm going to be the president of another public organization called the American Automatic Control Council. And there is a whole process. There's a publication ethics committee, which we appoint for each conference and journal, and it remains anonymous. And we do see these cases of plagiarism when people try to copy paste from others and in a very clever way so that you can fool some of these tools, but don't do that. There's a very high chance that you'll get discovered, and the penalty is very, very high. So please do not do any plagiarism. You cannot verbatim copy paste things. You can't just take something and just paraphrase it. Make sure that the thoughts that you're conveying are your own. You cannot coerce reviewers. In fact, reviewers also have a job of making sure that, oh, I will let you publish if you cite all of these papers of mine. Not right. And that's something editors should catch, and they will, saying, okay, you can ignore, and when you respond to it, you can say, no, this is not relevant, so I'm not going to cite it, right? And you can't just cite things that really, okay, you cite mine, I'll cite yours. You can't do that kind of a thing. And sometimes organizations actually sell authorship of publications, and so that's not really good. And keep track of these things as well. Sorry. Okay. Plagiarism. This is very, very important. Like I said, don't do any verbatim copied material, and don't think that you can get away with it because you only took a few parts, and then the tools that are used for plagiarism checks will be fooled. Not a good idea. If you're going to reuse somebody else's figures, make sure that there is permission. And the process of getting the permission is very clearly laid out. Then make sure that if you're using other people's text, it's okay. But then if you paraphrase, make sure that you cite them. Then that's okay. If you say you're inspired by something else, credit those ideas to other sources. And you really have to familiarize yourself to IEEE policies. IEEE policy requires all submissions to journals to be screened through a plagiarism detection process. There are all kinds of things called cross-check, authenticate, and it has various ways in which it compares any article that you submit with a database of scholarly papers, and it gives a very detailed report of similarity. So make sure that do not ever plagiarize. It never is helpful, and it can only hurt you in the long term. Now, you all know about ChatGPT and variants, and so they're extraordinarily useful. but you really have to be careful when you use them. And the guidance for using AI generated text is very clearly laid out in IEEE publications. So the use of content generated by AI in an article, it should be disclosed in the acknowledgement section. And it's not just limited to text, figures, images, or code. So and whatever the AI system is that is used, it should be identified. It should be say which article used what, and it should be accompanied by a brief explanation as to what extent you use the AI system. So very, very, very important, right? So you can use AI systems for grammar and editing, but that's not what this is. But this, anything other than outside of this, it should be disclosed. And all of the information in the link that is provided in here gives you more information. So this is, so when you, what kind of acknowledgement are we talking about? This is what I used it for. I used it for editing, for grammar, for spelling checks. And so this is the kind of acknowledgement checkbox that is often included in any of the publication. So make sure that you see what the typical text verbiage is that is used, so that that's something that you follow. Okay. So it also goes the other way. It's not just for authors. Reviewers too cannot really take AI generation of text for the review. Remember that as a reviewer, anytime that you get an article for review, you should really consider it extremely confidential. Only you should read it. You cannot upload it to some AI platform and ask the AI to review it. It is unethical. Do not do that. Right? It's really a breach of confidentiality. If you do that, there is a way in which you will be discovered. And again, it will not serve you in the long run. So please don't do that. This too is a complete no-no. We've already gone through this before. Don't submit your article to several journals. And don't take something, change this example to another example, and then repeat the whole thing. That's also considered self-plagiarism, and your article, you will be discovered and will be rejected. However, this doesn't mean that, like for instance, we talked about submitting it first to a conference, getting some feedback, and then expanding it. And so then that's fine. Then you're making it very clear that this is a preliminary version that you used, and then you have to then explicitly point out that all the extra stuff that you included in here is fully articulated, and reviewers will see that. And so both the earlier and later article, they undergo standard peer review. Later article contains substantially more information. It cites the earlier article and clearly indicates how they differ. All this is very standard. Of course, if you submit it to one place, it gets rejected, then you can learn your lessons and potentially submit to a different journal. That is allowed, of course. But just make sure that these principles and guidelines are followed. And sometimes some specific IEEE journals have rules on what's the new material. Sometimes it's like 30%, 35%, 40%, and pay attention to how, if you're first to a conference and then to a journal, what's the extra percentage of information that an IEEE journal requires. Okay, I think, so give me a minute. Almost there. So, ethical publishing, duplication, redundancies, and multiple submission. So the summary here, you must submit original work. It has not appeared elsewhere for publication. It's not under review at another publication. It cites the previous work, tells you exactly how it differs from previous work, and the authors must inform the editor when you're submitting any previously published work. And they specify, there are sometimes some IEEE journals request the authors to explicitly specify the submission was previously rejected by another journal. So pay attention to all these things. And the thing that you have to remember is that getting published, you're not alone. It's challenging. It takes time to reach your publishing goal, but the process is extraordinarily beneficial for you. And it's extraordinarily beneficial for the whole scientific community. And this is how we come together and we flourish and advance the state of the art and help humanity, right? So keep that in mind. So as a new author, the process of getting published can be long, can be frustrating. It can get rejected, but it's not considered to be personal. There is a technical, valid reason, and really try to look at it in an objective manner. Because a vast majority of papers that are submitted to a reputable journal will get rejected. If you see a rejection rate, an acceptance rate of 20%, that means out of every 10 articles, only 2 get accepted, right? That's just often many IEEE journals have this kind of an acceptance rate. So you want that kind of a quality standard, and you want to clear that bar, right? It's a benefit to the scientific process, because that way when you read these articles, then you know that it really has been vetted by a rigorous process and has a high standard. It raises the quality of research. It raises the level of quality of the whole corpus of scientific literature available to the community. Authors receive vital feedback because experts review it, they can improve it. And it ultimately, it's not just about writing a paper that gets published, it's about writing a paper that other people read and it has an impact, right? So it'll be helpful. It's worth it for your research, for your career, and for your institution. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Apologize for my voice, and it's been a pleasure for me to talk with you. Thank you.
Dr. Anaswamy, thank you so much for that excellent, very thorough presentation. As I had mentioned before, we see many questions for you in the chat that we will try to address as many as we can in the Q&A segment. To our audience, we are running slightly over, but that's okay. We're still gonna continue ahead with 2 other short presentations, and then we'll get to our Q&A, and we'll be able to address your questions at that time. So thank you so much. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Esther Lukash, who will talk to us about research strategies. Esther?
Thank you very much. So I will go through some tips before you actually start to write your article. Of course, you have to know what has been published before, and the best way to know and learn about this is to do literature review. And of course, you would use IEEE Explore and other digital libraries to find the most important papers in your field, to find gaps, to find new solutions. But in any case, I would recommend to create a personal account in IEEE Explore Digital Library or in other libraries to be able to save automated searching. With the IEEE Explore personal account, you can also save content alerts to follow the latest journals where you would like to submit your publication, etc. So don't forget to create a personal account in IEEE Explore. And when you start, you would start to search with keywords, and you would start with a broader search. You can start in the IEEE Explore's basic search, or we would maybe recommend for PhD students, master students, and all others to use the advanced search, where you can search within different fields of the database. Very important to search within the full text of the journal articles, conference papers as well. So please go to the advanced search and select this. And if you have a longer search query, or someone mentioned systematic literature reviews, you can start maybe in the command search, where you have a bigger search box. Besides the and or not Boolean operators, here you can also search with the proximity operator near and o near, and you can search within the same fields like in the advanced search. And this is just a very short summary about the ways and the maximum number of wildcards. So when you have this search, a broader search, and our search result list, in this case more than 670 articles, you can find out easily which were the most influential papers based on the number of citations they got. And in IEEE Explorer, we use here the Crossref citation data, but you can also link out to Scopus or Web of Science from the full text article. And there is a relatively new feature in IEEE Explorer. You can also produce a relevant search result of images, graphs, charts, flowcharts, etc., because we've been indexing also these figure sections of the articles. And for some of you, maybe that's an even easier way and faster way to see what results have been published. So you can browse your results based on these the keywords section, and then you can hover over the images and find the relevant corresponding of the actual paper, the conference paper or journal article, and even show these figures and pictures in the context. So this is relatively new, and there is even a new functionality where you can filter the images by type. And by the way, those of you who are going to write your thesis or dissertation, these images are under IEEE copyright, but of course you can use them for thesis and dissertation. You just have to give the copyright information and cite properly these images and figures. And if you're looking into an even more narrow type of search, and this is again relatively new, and it was kind of hidden in our help pages, you can target your searches with a keyword search to the image caption. So you can search only the image captions of the IEEE publications. And this is an example for how to enter the field name in quotation marks, image caption, and then enter the keyword. So image is one way of searching, but there will be new functionalities coming to IEEE Explorer soon, or even next year related to images and finding relevant images. And then you can resort and refine the search. So for example, if you're looking to find a relevant article, a relevant journal for your submission, you can filter your results for journals and magazines and select maybe the last year's publications and have an overview and check which journals and which magazines are publishing the most articles in these fields to identify relevant potential journals or magazines for your submission. And it has been also mentioned that you can use and you can publish supplemental items, code or data sets with your article. And this is how they would be visible. So someone is finding your article in Explore, they will also find the corresponding code or data sets. The code will be visible as a widget. We are cooperating with CodeOcean. So basically your code or algorithm is published as a code capsule on CodeOcean under an open license or as you select, and others can reproduce your results via CodeOcean. And some IEEE journals even include this into the peer review. So some IEEE journals, you can add codes into the peer review. And another option, if you are publishing your research data sets on IEEE Dataport, this is IEEE solution. You can store up to 2 terabytes. You can publish the data sets also as open access, or you can use them for your research. This is the link from IEEE Explorer to IEEE datasets and how to find the datasets which could be also relevant to cite or to use or consider if you planning to publish. And also important to identify who are the most important authors in your field. There is always a filter for the first 25 authors with the most results, the most papers published in the result list when you go on the IEEE Explorer research result page. And once you know the authors, the key authors, please spend time to learn more about them. Most of them, of course, they already have an ORCID ID. This is important also for the findability of your articles, and you can check out their ORCID profiles and other author profiles. And you can also follow these authors when you click on follow just below their picture. So these are two examples for author profiles. And to identify, some of you were asking about keywords or index terms. So to identify the most important technical terms which you might want to consider to use in our search query, or maybe consider to use in the title of your own article, there is a publication topics facet on the left-hand side of the result list. We've been working on re-indexing our content. There's a really rich source for you to check, or even just to check the relevancy of your result list to identify maybe interesting new fields. You can always review the publication topics facets. And of course, also every article has a section on the HTML, the keyword section, where you can find the list of these terms. In the middle, you see the machine-generated index terms, also an important resource. Then the author-provided keywords. These are accessible on the HTML, and you can consider them to use them or just basically to run your first search. You can use them as a source. And very important, if you are a PhD student, you can look into the conclusion section of the paper. Sometimes it's a separate section or the future work section of the paper to identify future trends or outlook according to the authors. And that is also one reason why I recommend to search within the full text of the articles, because the future trends section is usually not mentioned in the metadata, because metadata covers title, abstract. So always please search within the full text and the metadata. And then carefully check the aim and scope of the journal, your target journal where you would like to get published. In this example, I'm showing you the article in transactional learning technology. You can see the different metrics of the journal with the editor. And on the top of the page, you see this basic search bar where you can enter some keywords and target your search just in this journal. So run a search in the publication of this journal. And I would recommend, again, here to save a search in maybe several target journals with your keywords to see what has been published recently, how those results compare to your results, what papers were published, etc. And this is definitely a good recommendation to any journal. It doesn't matter if you publish at IEEE, to read the journal regularly where you are planning to publish. And within the IEEE, we have several societies. One of the societies is called the Education Society, and this journal, the Transactional Learning Technologies, is published by this society. And here you can find more detailed information for authors on the peer review, on the different type of articles. You can submit here recommendations for the peer review recommendation, how to write a cover letter. Sometimes these journals are planning to publish a special issue where you could look into options to submit. So this is highly recommended to all IEEE journals. Find out which society is sponsoring the journal and find more detailed information on the society's website. And there's something new we are also piloting. This is the transparent peer review. There are currently 4 journals offering this. So basically, we are including some journals include open peer review. And this will be visible on the HTML article. And if the periodical or the journal has opted in for this transparent peer review, and also the author and the reviewer opted in as well, so they both agreed, the peer review section will show you how many reviewer reports have been published or finished. And if you follow the link to Clarivate, you can find these publicly available peer reviews on Clarivate's sites. Okay, so not all articles included in Clarivate will have a corresponding record on Web of Science. And of course, first of all, only these 3 journals are piloting this, and the author as well as the reviewer has to also opt in. But this is a new test and pilot program at the IEEE, so you might find it valuable. And the link and the information will be presented via Clarivate. So your research problem must contribute a new important knowledge to your field, how you know what has been published. I mentioned setting and saving search alerts to your searches is important. You can also set citation alerts to the articles. So there is maybe a published article or even your own published article, and you will get notifications when someone is citing it. You can add or create a citation alert. This works only with your personal account. And another tip for searching, you can use your search history. Your last 100 searches are tracked. If you're using your personal account login and you switched on search history recording, and later on you can combine these searches and create longer search queries. Let's say you have a very long search query with several concepts. You can use the search history to create a longer search in preparation for the publication. And you can also export. You have different export options for the citation into different citation manager programs, or you can save the citations in the My Research project folders with your personal account login. You can select this option and create folders. Finally, as a reminder that you can find the templates in Word and LaTeX to all journals and conference proceedings at the IEEE Author Center. This is our main website for all authors. You can also find here the publication recommender tool, where you either enter a keyword or an abstract of your paper. And this tool will recommend you relevant periodicals or conferences, including in the last column, how long it takes in average between submission and publication time in IEEE Explore. Don't forget to spend time on the reference list, and the best way and the most accurate solution or the option for you is, and it's freely available, the IEEE Reference Preparation Assistant. So this has been updated this year, and this tool is available via the Author Center, IEEE Author Center. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks so much, Esther, for sharing those very useful tips and author resources that are available to our audience. And we also have many questions for you in the chat, and we'll get to those in the Q&A portion of our event today. Next, we're going to go to Chris Zakharewski, who talked to us about publishing options from IEEE. Chris?
All right. Thanks so much, Michael. And thanks to Esther, Dr. Anaswamy, thank you as well for your great presentations. And oops, let me see. And I'm going to talk today about the different publishing options and some resources that are available to IEEE authors. Now, it's always been IEEE's policy to support an author's choice on how they want to publish with IEEE or how they need to publish based on any funder, institutional, or geographical requirements. To help authors gain maximum exposure for their research articles, we have 3 options for publishing open access. And I won't spend too much time on these because Michael did talk about them at the start. But we have a collection of over 180 hybrid journals, which are journals that have both a traditional and an open access component, over 30 fully open access topical journals, as well as our multidisciplinary journal, IEEE Access. Now, with the above options, authors on IEEE have published over 150,000 open access articles on IEEE Explore. So it's pretty impressive. This is just a list of the fully open access journals, the more than 30 fully open access titles, and I won't get into them specifically in the interest of time, but just to talk to you about some of the newer titles that are available. In 2024 and 2025, IEEE launched journals in cybernetics, immersive displays, privacy, selected areas and sensors, data, as well as selected topics in electromagnetics, antennas, and propagation. Now, journal impact factor is one of the several metrics that the technical community uses to compare the impact of research journal, and a wide range of IEEE journals consistently rank highly in impact factor in multiple categories. You can see the majority of the top journals in electrical and electronic engineering are from IEEE, as well as the top journals in telecommunications, and many of the top titles in computer science, imaging, and automation and control systems. And just to look a little bit about some of the top journals published by IEEE, the IEEE Communications Surveys and Tutorials Journal is the #1 journal in journal impact factor in telecommunications and information systems. The IEEE Geoscience and Remote Sensing magazine is the #1 in imaging science and #1 in remote sensing. Transactions on Cybernetics is the #1 in cybernetics. The IEEE CAA Journal of Automatica Sinica is the #1 in automation and control. The Proceedings of the IEEE is a strong #2 in electrical engineering. The Journal of Selected Areas of Communication is #2 in telecommunications. And IEEE Wireless Communications is #2 in computer hardware and #3 in telecom. And the Transactions on Pattern Analysis and Machine Learning is the #3 in artificial intelligence and the #3 in electrical engineering. The site score is also a widely accepted metric. This one's developed by Scopus. In the most recent report, IEEE publications were also consistently strong in site score among cited journals in multiple categories. You can see a lot of the top journals in all of the fields of interest that IEEE supports: electrical engineering, computer science, hardware, signal processing, automotive technology and engineering, all really big focuses of interest for IEEE. Now, IEEE also ranks highly in journals within our key fields of interest in quartile rankings. This is also based on the Journal Citation Report. You can see that 68% of the top quartile journals in electrical engineering are from IEEE. 76% of the journals in telecommunications are from IEEE, 50% in automation and control, 44% of the journals in imaging science are from IEEE, and also a very strong presence, over 50% of the journals in computer science, both related to hardware and cybernetics. It's also worth mentioning that out of the 195 IEEE journals that have impact factors, 99 of those are in the first quartile, which is more than half of the IEEE journals in total. 56 are in the second quartile, 31 are in the third quartile, and 9 are in the fourth quartile. And those journals move up pretty significantly each year. There's more and more titles growing to those upper quartiles. Now, one reason why authors choose to publish with IEEE is that we listen to them. And we recently surveyed over 9,000 corresponding authors of recent IEEE journals. Now, this is both traditional and open access. And we asked them why they wanted to publish in the specific journal that they chose. The top responses were #1 at 98%, the reputation of the journal. Also very strong respondents in over 80%, the audience readership of that journal, the journal impact factor, the time of publication of an article, previous experience in publishing, and the reputation of the publisher. We also asked over 9,000 corresponding authors of open access articles what their leading motivation was for publishing open access with IEEE. And the majority said that it was for the purposes of open science. So 53% of respondents to that survey said that they published open access for the purposes of open science. Article visibility is a very important factor in deciding to publish open access, and authors want their articles to be in journals that their peers are reading. Mandates are definitely a factor. You can see 15% said that their institution requires it, 14 grant funders requires it, and then smaller percentages of national requirements or co-author requirements. So mandates are definitely a factor, but supporting open science and article visibility to peers are two very big factors why authors choose to publish open access with IEEE. Authors are also choosing to publish their articles in IEEE Access, which is IEEE's open access mega journal. And they're choosing to do so because this journal has a really outstanding editorial resources. There's over 800 experienced editors and 60 senior editors from a diverse editor pool. They have a very rapid submission to publication time of 4 to 6 weeks. Access features many of the most popular titles in IEEE Explorer, and you can see them highlighted on the left. The content within the journal is very geographically and topically diverse, and it has excellent citation and impact factors for a multidisciplinary journal. And you can see, based on the eigenfactor, IEEE Access is the #1 title in electrical engineering, the #1 title in telecommunications, and the #1 title in information systems. Now, I also wanted to illustrate how access to read content on IEEE Explorer impacts how authors publish with IEEE. Now, the countries listed here have either large consortia agreements or a large number of institutional subscribers. And in the interest of time, I just wanted to look at the top 3 users and how they're using Explorer. You can see it's, in this case, Germany, the UK, and Italy, where the usage is the most significant. There are almost 11 million articles viewed in Germany last year, over 9 million viewed in the UK, and more than 4.5 million viewed from Italy. Now, taking a look at how those same countries are publishing, Italy published over 2,100 articles in Explorer in 2024. The UK published well over 1,900, and German authors published over 1,500 articles. Now, breaking that down even a little bit more to show the difference in publishing trends between open access and traditional publishing, it's a pretty interesting exercise. And you can see that the UK is publishing significantly more in traditional publishing, with around 1,440 titles traditional, and just under 500 titles in open access. Germany has more of an even split, with 882 open access articles and 740 traditional. And Italy has significantly more open access publishing than traditional, with 1,420 open access and 732 traditional publications. Now, as you may know, IEEE does have a diverse group of authors and a huge network of corresponding authors from over 100 different countries all around the world. Now, within this map, the countries in dark blue represent regions where some or most institutions have open access publishing agreements with IEEE, and the light blue areas highlights regions where an author has published with IEEE, and this map gets more and more blue every single year. As you may know, the IEEE offers read and publish options for institutions, and these options would cover both the read access to content hosted on IEEE Explorer, as well as the publishing or APC component, and will allow authors at the institutions to publish open access with IEEE. A read and publish agreement would support researchers at institutions in efforts to advance open science, as well as make it more convenient for authors to publish with IEEE. One annual fee makes the administrative process easier as well, and you won't need to finance individual article processing charges, and it offers much easier tracking and reporting for articles published by institutions' authors. The IEEE has over 500 institutional open access customers around the world, including large agreements with consortium in Spain, Finland, Ireland, Brazil, and more. And if you're unsure if your institution has an open access agreement with IEEE, I would recommend that you check the IEEE Open site. It's open.ieee.org. You can navigate to the For Authors tab. You can find your institution's open access agreement from the drop-down, and then you can search or browse by institution, country, or region. You can also feel free to ask your local IEEE representative, or me, or your IEEE regional or area manager as well. Now, many institutional agreements that we have cover the full cost of the article processing charges, but authors can also take advantage of some fee-based options, such as overlength page charges or color options. Most IEEE journals do limit the number of pages per article, and if a research paper goes over that limit, there are some charges associated. These can vary by journal, but a good way to avoid them is to make sure that your research is succinct and to the point, and that you're aware of any page limits going into the submission of your article. Now, articles published are always in full color in their online version, but if your article has images that need to be printed in color in the physical printed edition or the physical printed version of your paper, there are charges associated with that. But black and white printing of graphics is always free of charge. If you have any questions specifically about a journal and the charges associated, the journal production manager can help determine the best options for your paper as well. Now, Dr. Anaswamy and Esther did speak about some of the other open science solutions that are available, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but CodeOcean was mentioned. This is a service that allows authors to upload code that's associated with their research, and that code can be accessed without a subscription to explore. Tech Archive is our preprint server where you can post early versions of your paper prior to peer review, and this allows you to establish your research and the time it was completed. And this can be valuable when it comes to establishing your research so that if any patents are filed in that space, there's a record of your research as well. IEEE Dataport allows authors to publish large data sets associated with research studies. Anywhere from 2 to 10 terabytes of data can be published per data set. And in addition to having an open access component, Dataport also has a subscription model that's available for any institution that needs to publish data sets that comply with any funder mandates. Now, if you have any questions about any of the content that we reviewed today, or if you'd like to request a custom publishing report for your university or institution, me or one of my colleagues would be more than happy to assist you. Our regional manager is Judy Brady, and then the international area managers, Eva Veloso, Josh Horowitz, or me. And we can answer any questions in regards to open access and read and publish programs, open science initiatives, and any questions you may have regarding access to IEEE Explore as well. And that's my last slide. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris, for sharing all that information. Chris covered a lot of information about open access publishing agreements with institutions. Before we move on, we do have a poll question for our audience members that are faculty or librarians or open access administrators. We wanted to ask you, Chris covered a lot of information, but if you would like someone from IEEE to contact you about institution-wide OA publishing agreement options for your institution, please just click the yes box on your screen, and we'll be happy to have someone follow up with you. So again, Chris mentioned all the different options that IEEE offers for institutions and authors. If you'd like to learn more about those options for institutions, please just click the yes button, and we can have someone provide more information to you about what's available. So we'll just give you a moment to make your selection here. And while you're doing that, we're queuing up some of the questions for our Q&A portion, which is going to start in just a moment. Apologies that we went a little bit over time, but we are still going to cover as many Q&A questions as we can. Okay, so it looks like everyone has made their selections. I'm going to move us ahead. These are just a couple of the resources that were mentioned in the presentations today. I just wanted to reinforce them to you at open.ieee.org. Has all the information about the different open access options that IEEE offers for authors and institutions. A lot of the information presented is available there, and there's a lot of information on IEEE Access at IEEE.access.ieee.org. That's IEEE's largest open access publication. Okay, so we're going to go through the questions that are that were submitted through the Q&A window. We're going to try to answer as many common questions as we see common threads or topics that are popping up. And there were a couple that were submitted during the registration process. So I'm going to handle those first. So one of the questions was, how do I join IEEE and what are the benefits? Well, if you go to IEEE.org/membership/join, you can find information on IEEE and the different benefits that we offer. And we have different options different benefits depending on where you are in your career, for whether you're a student or a practicing engineer. So there are many networking benefits, access to information, and many career development opportunities that IEEE offers as part of a membership. So we encourage you to go to this site to learn more. We also received a couple of questions about AI-assisted writing tools and how does IEEE's plagiarism detection process and peer review evaluation adapt to ensure the originality of a paper's contribution. So it's an excellent question, and it's one that is definitely on our minds. I would encourage our audience to, I'm going to provide the link here as well, to a recent feature that was in IEEE Spectrum in December of 2024 that talks about ways that IEEE works to continue to strengthen its research integrity process. And you'll be able to see quotes here from the 2024 Vice President of IEEE Publication Services and Products, that's Sergio Benedetto, as well as the Managing Director of IEEE Publications, Stephen Hefner, in which they talk about this. And a couple of things that they say from the article is that IEEE recognizes the importance of ensuring a very strong peer review process and the need to protect the integrity of that publishing process. And that IEEE takes this very seriously, and that we're taking all steps necessary to guard against misconduct in the research process. Within the overall publishing industry, there are many more types of misconduct and cases of violation. It's essential for all publishers to deal with them. And Stephen Hefner in this feature talks about some of the different tools that IEEE is investing in around detection and investigation for these types of issues. And we're investing with partners to develop new technologies and scaling up these systems. So there's a lot more information on this topic if you look at this feature. So here is the link to IEEE Spectrum. You'll be able to see this in the slide deck. And there's also an ethics reporting line. So if anyone sees an issue or suspects misconduct of any type, including inappropriate citations or inappropriate use of AI or plagiarism, they can file a complaint to the IEEE ethics reporting line. It's available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and it's managed through an independent third party. And here's the link right here. There's an 800 number and also a web form. Okay, so we'll go to some other questions that were submitted for our presenters. We're going to start off with one for Dr. Anaswamy. Here's one in which they say, I'd like to guide my students in avoiding common mistakes to increase their chances of getting published. So based on your experience, Dr. Anaswamy, what is the most common mistake you see made by new authors when submitting to a publication?
A very good question. I don't know about a common mistake, but often just knowing what the scope of the journal is and what are the sort of typical articles that they publish. The authors may not be quite familiar with what that culture of that particular journal is or that forum is. And sometimes there is that sort of misfit between the scope and what the paper is trying to do. So that's one common mistake. And the other is not really doing sufficient literature survey. You should know the state of the art quite well in order to really say, okay, this is what people did before, and this is what they missed, and this is what I'm going to do. To tell that story, it's really important to know what others did. And so not really paying enough attention and not having done your homework, I would say, is another mistake that I often see. So trying to really get a sense of who the authors are and the work is that they've done, that you're comparing that your work in perspective is really important. And that will not only help in writing the paper, but even more importantly, doing your research. So that's something that I would encourage you to talk to your students about. Excellent.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I have another question while we have you on the line that looks like it would be appropriate for you. When evaluating an article, you mentioned that editors look for articles that represent novel ideas. Can you please elaborate on how editors define novel when evaluating a paper?
I think there was actually a slide that talked about what novelty is. And so please do look at the recording. And that really is a very good list. Novelty is defined in various ways. It could be in defining a new problem. It could be in developing a new methodology, of course, or it could be in improving the methodology. It could be in trying to take a methodology that is well understood in one area, but then has never been really explored, for instance, here. So you then bring that tool or that method to this problem and show that it works and is much better than the other methods. So novelty is what's new. What is it that a new aspect that you're bringing in? And all of those are really constitute novelty. Not only, do you have to keep this in mind when you do your research, but more importantly, explain that clearly in the writing. Like, so then you could even have a specific paragraph. The contributions of this paper are 1, 2, 3. And so make sure that 1, 2, 3 clearly explains what is new and what is novel about this, right? So those are, I don't know if that answered your question, but that's what I would say.
Oh, I think it does quite well. Thank you, Professor. We received a couple of questions around the submission process. So here's someone with a question asking, and I believe you covered this in your presentation, but maybe you can help us reinforce it here. Is it possible to submit an article to more than one publication at a time? And they also, another person asked, if a paper is rejected from one journal, can it then be submitted to another at that point? Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, the answer to the first question is a clear no. Do not submit the same paper to 2 journals at the same time. Do not do that. That is considered unethical. And in fact, all publications explicitly ask that you check a box that says this paper has not been submitted elsewhere. And so if you say that it has been, then most likely your paper will not be reviewed. So that's very important. So don't do that. But the answer to the second question is yes, of course. If it gets rejected in one journal, then you can most certainly submit it to another journal and follow the policies that are articulated by the publication. If they say, they explicitly have to say it was submitted to such and such a journal and rejected, you should say that, then you should say it, right? And it's perfectly fine. It has nothing to do, it's not at all a criticism of your paper. It could be that it was just not a good fit. For instance, once we submitted a paper that looked at only field tests. We had done some work where we had a particular methodology that we developed and we tested it in the Charles River. But according to that journal, Charles River was not considered a field test. And so they rejected it, which is perfectly fine. So then we submitted to another journal that does applications and they publish it there. So these things happen. And sometimes, often, you have to find it is because you might not have had the right fit with the journal. And you can do that. So it is perfectly fine to resubmit to a new journal.
Thank you, Professor. Just to elaborate on that a bit, if the author, when they were rejected, if they received any reviewer feedback at that time, would you advise them to revise the article before submitting it to another journal?
Most certainly. Please do, because all reviewers have a certain point, and it's always useful to keep that in mind. It is true that the same reviewers might not be the reviewers for the second time submission, but that's fine because you have at least addressed that point of view and fixed that hole and said that particular part better. So do take into account reviewers' comments and respond and revise, even though those reviewers might not look at the same paper.
Thank you, Professor. We also received a couple of questions about peer review. So I think these are related. So one person had asked, how do editors choose peer reviewers? And another one said, I'm interested in becoming a peer reviewer. How would I start that process?
Let me deal with the second one first. I would just reach out to the editor and say, I would like to become a reviewer. How do I do that? And then they might either take your input in, and we're always looking for a good reviewer, so that is always great. Or they would say, well, we don't do this, but we would recommend that you reach out to such and such. So all editors do respond to your question. So the best way is to find who the editor-in-chief is and just write to them. Okay. Or you could write, if it's not clear, you could write to anybody on the editorial board and they should be able to help you. They will be able to help you. The first one is, well, often your reference list is a good source for identifying reviewers. Your keywords is a good way in which they find other reviewers. All journals have typically like a database, and you can, all of the reviewers are listed and their expertise. And so sometimes you use the keywords in order to identify who the reviewers are. These are all automated database searches. And they use the database searches using your keywords, using some of the phrases that you might have in your abstract, and of course your title. And sometimes when you write your introduction, at one point you might say something like, the most relevant state of the art was done in such and such a paper by such and such a person. We do this. In contrast to that, we do X, Y, and Z. Then the reviewers of that paper most certainly will be, or rather the authors of that paper will be your paper's reviewers. So that's basically how it's done.
Thank you, Professor. We also received a couple of questions, I think for Esther, about some of the tips and tools that she had covered in her presentation. One of them, Esther, is here's someone who says that they're an IEEE author, and then they'd like to edit their author profile that's listed in Explore. How do they go about doing that?
Yes. If they would like to edit, there is a self-service area. If you find your profile, you have to be logged in with your personal account in IEEE Explorer, and there you can request updates. And this is not done automatically, so it takes time. You can see also on which status your update request has, because it's routed to an admin team for reviewing. Yeah, so that's a relatively new feature, I think. So if you find your profile, there is an option to request updates to your profile.
Thank you, Esther. Here's a question from an IEEE author who wants to know, how would I know if someone had cited a paper that I authored?
Well, in IEEE Explorer, you can find your article and you can set up a citation alert to your paper. But of course, you can also go to other citation abstracting and indexing databases like Scopus or Web of Science, or you go directly to an IEEE Explorer and set a citation alert with your personal login on Explorer.
Thanks, Esther. Here's a question about submission of publication time. So here's someone who'd like to know which IEEE journals have the fastest submission to publication times.
It might be IEEE Access, but because they have like 4 to 6 weeks for getting back to you. But if you would like to see the approximate time between submission and publication time in IEEE Explorer before you submit to the journal, this is usually listed on the IEEE Publication Recommender tool. I was mentioning this tool in my presentation, so you can upload maybe a short summary of your paper, and that tool will recommend you periodicals, meaning journals or magazines. You will be presented relevant risk information on if it's open access available, the impact factor, the journal impact factor from the journal citation report, and the last column shows the average time between submission to publication time in IEEE Explorer.
Great. Thank you, Esther. Here's another one that I think would be appropriate for you. Someone had asked, is there any template I should use from my manuscript when I submit?
Yes, so there are definitely different templates for conference papers. And of course, many IEEE journals, they have their own templates. All of these templates you can access if you go to the IEEE Author Center. and go to Author Tools, and there is a tool called Template Selector, and you can download the templates in Word or LaTeX for all journals and also for the magazines and for the conference papers.
Great. Thank you, Esther. I think I have another one here for you. What advice do you have for early career researchers to increase their visibility? So as a new author, are there any tips you can offer me to help ensure that my newly published work gets noticed and read and hopefully cited?
So after, even before you submit, you can use the IEEE Tech Archive preprint server, which is where you can publish an early version of your article. And then after the peer review, after it has been published, it is also helpful if you publish it open access, because it's freely available to anyone around the world without the need of subscription or pay-per-view fee. It's also published under a Creative Commons license. It might get even more citations if it's freely available. Then I would also recommend, if it's possible, to use graphical abstracts or video abstracts. And even some conference papers have something similar, which you can post then later after your paper is published on social media to in your network. So these would be my main recommendations. Also, absolutely recommended to create an ORCID profile, like an author profile, which is also a way of promoting your papers, your research profile. Some authors are better in updating this ORCID profile. Yes, and so definitely share this also with your colleagues on social media, and some of you, your university websites are also publishing the list of the publications, or you have a communication team who can help you with promoting the papers.
Thank you, Esther. I have a couple more questions. I think these would be appropriate for Chris. Chris, here's a question for you. Why would an author choose to publish open access over traditional publishing?
So there could be many different reasons to publish open access. It really depends on the unique circumstances and goals of the individual author. Visibility is a big one. An author wanting to make sure that their peers and colleagues and maybe even their students have access to their article research quickly and free of charge. It'll allow an author to quickly announce recent developments to a very broad audience. And you can reach a wide audience of millions of global users through IEEE Explore with free access to your article. You can also publish open access to satisfy any requirements, whether it be institutional or governmental funding requirements. And that would all be great reasons to choose publishing open access versus traditional.
Great. Thank you, Chris. We talked a little bit about publishing OA and APC fees. Someone in our audience had asked, is there a submission fee to publish open access with IEEE? Would you mind handling that one?
Sure, absolutely. So in order to submit an article, there is no fee at all. IEEE offers open access programs to make it convenient for institutional authors and funders to support, but there's no fee to submit. Once your article has been accepted to an open access periodical, there would then be either a charge towards an APC of your institution, or it would be a charge for you to publish your journal open or your article open access.
Right. Thank you, Chris. With that, so we have gone well past our time for the Q&A. So I want to thank our presenters for hanging on, and our audience for hanging on for this Q&A session. I'm glad we were able to address so many of these questions in the time that we have here. And I want to thank our audience. Thanks so much for your time today. Access to a recording of today's event will be made available a few hours after the webinar. A link will be emailed to all registered attendees. Here are some links to some other resources where we'll go much more in depth into some of the topics that we had covered here related to IEEE Access. The IEEE Author Center has many, many great tips and resources for prospective authors for you, so we highly encourage you to take a look at that. Open.ieee.org goes into detail about all of our open access options. And of course, the IEEE Explore Digital Library is a great place to start your research. You can click the certificate icon at the bottom of the screen to request your certificate of participation. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see you at a future IEEE event.